Hi guys, and welcome to my webinar on book recommendations. So I'm going to kind of come at this from a couple of different angles. I know I mentioned mindset, should I say. A lot of these books are very much mindset focused. I'll touch on kind of what I got from them, a couple of things like that. But I'm also going to focus on three key parts of book recommendations, and that is Audible itself, podcasts, and then books, giving you kind of my top 5 that I've read thus far. So what I don't want you to feel is that you need to go onto Amazon and buy all of these top 5 and then start searching other authors that I've written down here, or go and subscribe to Audible. But first thing that I am going to say is, unless it's changed, Audible is $7.99 a month for 1 credit, and 1 credit will always get you 1 full book. I am, I think, about 3 books behind, in a sense that I've downloaded books that I know I want. They're sat in my library, and with a mix of listening to podcasts and listening to Audible and driving a lot less, I've got a bank of kind of books to go through and podcasts to go through. But one thing that has helped consuming more information from books has been including Audible within my life. So £7.99 a month for 1 credit, which is 1 book. And some of these books I have not read, but they have been listened to instead. But obviously the content is exactly the same. So that's one thing potentially to bear in mind. If you're looking to, if you're really a fan of podcasts, Audible is like that next step, I would say, because you can consume so much through your ears, whether it's on your walks, as you're getting kind of steps in, walking the dog, in the car. It just makes, for me, it feels kind of dead time. And if I'm in the mindset where I don't just want kind of silence, perhaps on a dog walk, I'm straight here or I'm straight here, just in case at the end of the day I don't necessarily want to get a book out and read 5 pages. So Audible, we've covered that. I think, put it this way, I would pay double that to get 1 credit every month. That, I think it's that worth it. Podcasts are free. Obviously, I'm plugging my own Infinite Potential podcast. I'd like to hope that there's a lot of gems on there completely for free. Mine's on 8 different platforms. Most podcasts are available on Spotify and iTunes, and then from there it's like Podreach, Podbean and stuff like that, depending on what apps you're using, more than likely if you've got an Android phone. But as long as you search something like Infinite Potential Podcast for myself, you'll find it on any major podcast platform. Podcasts came before Audible for me, and they were a complete game changer, specifically for my mental health and my mindset, also for my business. I've still got a long way to go with how I run my business, but they're the kind of things that a lot of my podcasts and Audible are focused towards mindset, in kind of self-development, and for me kind of generally geared towards the fitness industry or being part of the fitness industry. There's loads of podcasts that I could kind of reel off and recommend. Well, obviously I listen to certain ones. Joe Rogan's quite a famous one. His are quite long. Some podcasts are, you know, shorter, snappier episodes. You'll find podcasts with guests on tend to be quite longer, and you'll find that on my own as well, and more like 30 minutes to an hour. But what you're going to get with podcasts is you're going to get a boatload of free information and support, okay? And then it's up to you to action it, and that's where the accountability from coaching and things like that is helpful. But you are going to get a lot of free education, and again, in the car, on the move, on the walk. It's a great way to soak up knowledge for later implementation. Now, books. I've read my entire life, like growing up. It was like fantasy books like Harry Potter, late teens, early 20s, like crime novels. And I've moved away from reading for enjoyment. I tried to take a book I would enjoy, perhaps like on holiday, to try and really switch off from work. Most of my books are mindset, self-development, or kind of business-ish related. Ironically, my top 5 are all, I'd probably say, geared towards mindset. And there's some incredible books in this list. One thing I will say with books is they can feel overwhelming. You can feel like, if you enjoy reading, but it can feel like a bit of a slog, like trying to fit it in the day, and that's because you're trying to fit too much in. If you really enjoy reading, it's just like the journey that we're on, whether it's muscle building or fat loss or body recomposition, whatever you want to call it. It's about step-by-step processes, lifestyle change and things like that. So if you're looking or you're struggling to get time to sit and read your book, it's about making sure we're off our phones, as I've said to many of you before, making sure we're off our phones at a good time. When we go up to bed, instead of flicking through Instagram, flick through 5 pages. Turn it into a 5-page rule. Before I go to bed, I'm going to read 5 pages. 5 pages of most books, a couple of minutes perhaps. Some books you could go, I'm going to read a chapter, that might work for you. You could just look to read to wind down during the week rather than the weekend, but there's loads of ways, and it's just about that chapter a day mentality, that 1%, that 5 pages here, 3 pages here, that chapter here. But most importantly, it's about making sure the books that you read are adding something to your life, whether that is escapism. So for me, the kind of crime novel books that I read, or like the fantasy books, or whether it's self-development and something that you're interested in. And that takes me to my top 5. Number 1 is a book or an audiobook that I think every single person on the planet, bar none, would benefit from listening to. Now, David Goggins divides opinion. He's obviously spent multiple years within the SEALs, within the American Forces, also an Army Ranger, coveted American officer within forces. So he swears a lot, Within the book itself, is in written words, but also on the audiobook. If you can kind of get around that, and that doesn't necessarily frustrate you in any way, what he actually delivers in You Can't Hurt Me is untouchable, I think. The audiobook specifically was the first audiobook where there was a narrator reading the book. David Goggins was in the recording studio as well. The narrator would read a chapter and then they would talk about that chapter, and you had like bits that weren't in the book that came out, explanations, further detail, and then they set challenges within that audiobook. But the book even itself is a superb read. I have read the book and I have listened to the book. It touches on your mind being more powerful than you give it credit for, that your body's got, well, your body will want to give up before your mind's ready. It's kind of where the infamous "you think you're done, you're only 40% there," where that rule has kind of come from. David Goggins has kind of founded that and really pushed with that. But it's also, it's a great triumph story. It's a great, from nothing, here I am, look at the obstacles that beat me back, and all I did was move around it, go under it, jump over it. You know, it didn't necessarily happen first time, didn't necessarily happen second or third time. But what he didn't do was he never gave up, and then he speaks about a calloused mind, just like the calluses on well, my hands especially. He speaks about a calloused mind, building kind of that ability to withstand tension when you're holding onto the bar. His world record attempts at pull-ups, doing a 100-mile run with no training, which he admits he wouldn't recommend, but it was about how he approached it in here that got the legs, as they were broken, literally running on stress fractures around the run. So if you're struggling with self-doubt, anything like that, listening or reading to this book is a great place to start. Number 2, now, if you've not heard of Ross Edgley, I implore you to go and search him on YouTube and search The Great British Swim. This man, nearly 2 years ago now, swam from Margate all the way around the British coastline and back to Margate. It took him over 150 days, and he would swim with tides pretty much 6 hours on, 6 hours off, 6 hours on, 6 hours off for over 150 days. He approached it with just the most unique mindset, and I mean, it's just inspirational what he did. One of his books, which kind of maps, what it does is he talks about where he is on the route, but then he talks about the art of resilience and how he developed that through the Great British Swim, and understanding that, you know, they were only a few weeks in when Rhino Neck, which he refers to a lot, which is where his wetsuit and the salt water from the sea was cutting a very deep wound into the back of his neck. So he spoke about gaffer taping it up, Vaseline, swimming through absolute fields of jellyfish, getting back, and it's just like get back in when you don't want to, doing things when you don't want to. The art of resilience. Ross Edgley is just, from my point of view, within the fitness industry, there is nobody better to gain motivation from, but to gain self-belief from, and understanding that you're more resilient than you think you are. So the art of resilience, I would 100% recommend. He's also written the world's fittest book, which breaks down a lot of the things that I've spoke about. So when we did understanding training principles and things like that, he travelled the world for about 10 years with tribes, worked with sprinters, worked with hunter-gatherers, and just basically compiled this book as to like, what is fitness, what is health. So the world's fittest book is also another really good read by him. But yeah, The Art of Resilience by Ross Edgley is superb. Number 3, I think he's just got another book come out. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. Ant Middleton. This is his middle book, it will be now, The Fear Bubble. And what it speaks about is, when he was obviously in the SAS, it was about how you could harness fear. So being stood the other side of the doorway, not knowing what was the other side of it, and that adrenaline, the fear of what was going to happen, how you can harness that and kind of turn it to good, or to actions that benefit you. And he correlates that with kind of everyday life. And it's a really interesting read. He can, again, kind of similar to David Goggins, I think with their military side of things, they can divide opinion. But what I would say is harnessing that self-doubt, apprehension, adrenaline, fear, and kind of feeling the fear and doing it anyway. That's kind of where Ant Middleton comes into his own with The Fear Bubble. It, again, is a great read. And again, I have listened and read that book. So you can see that there's not just a theme of, I pick different things up from both platforms. Number 4, if you were on the retreat, numerous slides of my habit and mindset work on the retreat were slides that I derived from learnings from Mr. James Clear's Atomic Habits. It is a superb book. Understanding habits is key. I've spoken time and time again about the importance of habits on the process or the journey that we're on. And when I speak about habits, I'm speaking about them as loops. Understanding where the cue, the reward, and that cycle, how that cycle repeats itself. Understanding that you can change the cue, you can change the reward, you can change the stimulus, therefore you can change the direction of the loop, you can change the habit. But it's understanding where that habit kicks in. What is your cue? How do you recognise your cues? So Atomic Habits, again, superb read. One, actually, in terms of actioning tomorrow, that I would like look to read straight away, it would probably be this one, because there's things you could literally action straight away. The 3 above, they're going to get you thinking, they're going to get you changing your mindset over time. This is one where you can go, I don't like that habit. James Clear's helped me identify my cue, routine, reward. Where can I either cut the loop or move the loop? So again, great read. Number 5, again, Dr. Carol Dweck, featured heavily in the mindset work that I went through on the retreat. Her book, simply titled Mindset, is incredible. A lot of it is kind of focused on fixed and growth mindsets, glass half full, glass half empty, these kind of things. And it's just been a super empowering book for me, really, really has. I've read it once, I'm going to read it again, and the second time I've started, as I've kind of developed reading more and more books, I've started reading them with a highlighter or a pen, especially if they're self-development or mindset orientated. It's my book, I own it. If I want to scribble in it or make a note of something that's important, I do. And when I go back through her book, I'm going to do that this time, just to highlight even more things for me. So they're probably the 5 that I've read within the last year and a half or so, 2 years, that have had the most profound effect on myself, my mindset, my mental health, or what I do as a person / how I run my business. So how I run my business could correlate to how you run your life or how you deal with work. So it's all going to correlate in terms of, these aren't books just because I'm self-employed that I've read them. These are books because I'm on a journey and I want that journey to be the best journey possible. I'm interested in improving that journey. Therefore, I want to see, you know, how Ant Middleton dealt with Everest, because the fear bubble refers to Everest. How Ross Edgley dealt with swimming around Great Britain. How David Goggins dealt with failing at multiple world record attempts and is the most decorated soldier in American history. You know, these kind of things, these are people that are kind of leading the way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't been in our position before, you know. Every single athlete was a beginner at some point. Every single expert was a novice. Every single person here has a story to tell, and they map it very well, whether it's within education type work or kind of more mindset, holistic type work. Professor Steve Peters' The Chimp Paradox is another book that I've only read in part, but it's superb. I currently have it on Audible, waiting to have a listen, but I would already recommend it, because when I was on my course with the British Legion a couple of years ago, and we were going through counselling, we referred to the Chimp Paradox on a daily basis, and it really does have some incredible teachings in. So the Chimp Paradox is another one I would recommend. I'm currently reading Brian Keane's The Fitness Mindset, which is kind of a fitness orientated version of Carol Dweck's mindset, and that's, again, it's a superb read. Really enjoying it. It's got pages to kind of take action on. And I've also really enjoyed some of Ollie Ollerton's work, who's another one of the SAS Who Dares Wins guys. There's loads more out there, you know, how to win friends and influence people, how to own the day. There's loads of books that I'm just kind of, I can glance at my shelf and keep reeling them off. But what I want to stress is obviously setting aside time, but books that you enjoy. Understand that there's different benefits to listening and reading at the same time, and you've got the opportunity to listen to free to experts within their field, or at a very, very affordable price, you can go through some of these books in greater detail and pick up different things from them. So, in summary, for me personally, the biggest kind of changes in my life since my degree have come in the last 2.5 years, when I've taken kind of reading not just for enjoyment and escapism, but reading to learn and develop myself onto another level. And these are some of the key ones that I would look into. What I'm going to do is put a reading list up on Amazon, and then I can link that in the email and in the notes on this video, so you guys can have a look and you can find some of these without having to go searching yourselves. So hope that helped.